Winter is waning. Predator season is coming to a close, and varmint season is right around the corner. With me, I've got two varmints friends. We're here to talk about our favorite predator hunting and varminting cartridges today. I know both of you have a brand new favorite. Well, new to you at least.
New to me.
We're going to talk about those. But let's welcome you in first. We got Tate Bradfield of Process-Based Hunter and Landon Bassett?
Yeah, that's it.
I like you even better. I don't know. I've always known Landon as Landon. One of Tate's guides and fellow, movers and shakers in the Process-Based Hunter organization.
Correct.
And these guys have been hunting everything from coyotes and raccoons up to buffalo through the past fall and winter.
And we've shot buffalo and coyotes with the same cartridges, so we can tell you what about some
crossover there. Excellent. Well, let's dive right in and just, before you really address a topic fully, you should try and define it. So, what do you got? How would you guys define the difference between a predator cartridge and a varmint cartridge?
That's hard because there's a lot of crossover in there. I know guys that shoot lions out of trees with that 17 Remington right there. And so I think there's a lot of crossover, but I would say a predator, so I guess let's talk about that. Like, are we defining the cartridge, or are we defining what a predator is versus what a varmint is?
The predator versus a varmint.
What I would say, oh man, that's hard. Because there's a lot of crossover there. Maybe a varmint would be anything that's causing maybe just damage, like it'd be like a ground squirrel, a rock chuck, a groundhog, anything like that. And a predator would be anything that's something more like a bobcat, a coyote, maybe a mountain lion in there as well, a wolf, fox,
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
What do you say, Landon?
There's a lot of crossover because it's like a raccoon. I put it almost in both. A raccoon is predator because it destroys pheasant nests and eats turkeys like crazy. Yeah. But at the same time, it's a nuisance for a dairy farmer they're just distilling the cow's grain. Yeah. So it's hard to define, right there.
And they can be dangerous. I've known raccoons to kill dogs.
Really?
Yeah, drown them. In coon dog country, if they get out in a pond or something, the dog gets a hold of them, they'll turn and climb on the dog's head and hold it underwater.
Oh.
So they can be pretty vicious. Landon, scoot in here just a little bit.
All right.
I want to make sure those viewing on YouTube can see you. You're definitely the most spectacular looking of our movies. Yeah. Landon's got a beard that would make Jeremiah Johnson envious. And by the way, folks, if you are watching this on YouTube, be aware this is not a 15-minute hard-hitting, punchy YouTube video. This is a podcast. And we're here to just talk and visit and dig deep about predator cartridges and varmint cartridges, the differences, and those that cross over and do both real well. So, if we're here for an hour, welcome to the show. Now, I would add a dynamic to this definition you guys have just proposed, and that is that, of course, we're crossing over into the realm of the tools now, but varmint shooting often, not always, but often involves high volume shooting. Prairie dog towns and so forth. Where predator shooting, it might be 1 to 3 shots. If you're lucky enough to take 2 or 3 out of I almost said a flock of coyotes. A herd of coyotes, a pack of coyotes.
You got there.
You're doing really well, right? Or, if we're talking coons, 2 or 3 coons out of a tree or something, but wolf, mountain lion, usually the coyotes, foxes, bobcats, all those, you hope it's one shot and done.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So there's some difference in crossover, in the cartridge we choose there. So now that we've adequately muddied the water in what the difference is between varmints and predators, let's talk about what a cartridge should, features that a cartridge should offer to be good at each. And let's start with predators, because we've just come through predator hunting season.
Yes, and we've schmacked a bunch of them this year.
Okay, so let's lump these into, we'll kind of leave raccoons in that no man's land. So foxes, coyotes, bobcats, if you're in Alaska, lynx, wolves here in Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, of course Alaska, and so forth. Anywhere they're legal. Pick a cartridge, Tate.
Oh man, for predator specifically.
Yeah. And not necessarily just your most recent love, but like if you had to be a professional predator hunter crossing through all those species, what do you think you'd pick?
I'd probably go with a 6mm Creedmoor or a 243.
Solid choices. Why?
If we're going across the array and wolf is included in that, I want something that's gonna have a little bit more authority with a wolf, because they're about the same size as a deer in some regards. Mm-hmm. So I want a deer gun, basically, is what I want.
Yeah.
And so, but for coyotes, I would not hesitate to shoot a 22-250. I would shoot a wolf with a 22 Creedmoor as well. I wouldn't hesitate to do that.
Sure.
But I would probably choose as an all-round good predator cartridge, I'm going to go with a 6mm.
If you were treating your fur with, I almost said righteous intent, but not, basically if fur prices were high and the way you prepared your fur and the holes your cartridges left, your bullets left in that fur was a big factor, would that change your
It would.
decision?
I would probably go with a 204.
Okay.
In that regard.
Sure.
Because I can tell you, I just recently bought a 204, and I can tell you
Spoiler alert.
it is the correct answer.
Yeah.
I was shooting raccoons in the neck area, and the reason I bought it is because I had a 6.5 Creedmoor that I was shooting with.
The vitals are behind the shoulder?
Yeah. Well, I was trying to neck shoot them.
I'm giving you a hard time.
I hit them all over the place, but there was
hard
only
to see them at night.
It is hard. It looks like raccoons look like a big ball at night through the thermal.
Yeah.
So you're shooting
very distinctive, like some other things.
You're shooting a ball of heat, is what you're doing.
Shoot the glowing ball.
But the 204 would go in, and I shot a coyote with it as well. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it kind of overlaps into that predator. I shot the coyote. It was about 240 yards. And it went into the coyote's chest. The coyote was sitting on its haunches looking at me, and I shot it square in the chest. And it went in about 5 inches, and I couldn't find where the entrance hole was.
Because it's so small.
Because it's so small. I couldn't find the entrance hole. There was no exit hole.
Yeah, it's perfect for fur preservation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had an old friend back through my college days working in an archery pro shop. I used to shoot the Tuesday night traditional archery league. We'd scatter 3D targets out through this big warehouse out to about 35 yards, and we'd shoot about 40 targets a night on Tuesday nights, and just had a ton of fun shooting our longbows and recurves and stuff. Well, this one guy was an electrician and a hardcore predator calling competitive shooter, right? Uh-huh. So he'd travel all over the West, probably from Oklahoma to wherever, doing coyote calling competitions, and he made a fair amount of money doing it. So one day I asked, what's your go-to cartridge? And he said, you know what, I'm just out calling and collecting fur. I shoot a 17 Remington.
That makes sense, though.
Super fast, tiny little bullet. But he said, when I'm calling and there's money on the line, this is part of how I make my living, I go to a 243 because they very rarely get away when hit with a 243. Yeah. Even if you don't make the greatest shot, or if they're moving and you just have to take what you get or whatever. He said, I will on occasion see one get away with the 17 Remington.
Yeah.
And the 204 probably is a little more potent than a 17. So it's probably better for that while still maintaining the fur protecting characteristic. How about you, Landon?
I'd go the 22-250.
For your all-around.
All-around predator. Because you can shoot a lighter bullet and still make it blow up and not cause too much fur problems. But you can also shoot a little heavier grain bullet and punch right through it longer distances.
Especially if you have a tighter twist in your barrel.
Yeah, if you go to that 1-8 twist, you can start shooting the 70 grain, 80 grain bullets and start poking out there a little further. Yeah. Which also ties into that 22 Creedmoor. They get that.
What 22 Creedmoor?
I don't know, all of them.
Cartridge the emotional quiver in his voice. The passion.
Landon is currently turning a new barrel for his action.
Oh, nice.
So I had a 22-250, AI that had a slow twist.
Okay.
1 in 12.
Yeah.
12.
So I could stabilize, 50s, 55s.
Sure.
But they were screaming.
Yeah.
I just went to the 22 Creed with a 1 in 8.
You have seen the light.
I have. It's a beautiful
Welcome to
thing.
the fold, my son.
It's a beautiful thing.
So, how about you as far as fur? If you were gathering, let's say coyotes were bringing $400 a piece, and you could get the occasional wolf for $2,000 and whatnot.
Yeah, 22-250 with a 35 grain bullet.
Really?
Yep, because you can punch in and blow it up, and it's a 22 caliber hole, right? Little tiny.
Have you ever seen a big crater on the impact side from doing something like that?
No, I haven't. I mean,
I have. Usually when I hit a bone.
I shot a coyote once in Oregon while hunting mule deer, and definitely not a predator cartridge. I was using a 6.5 by 284 Norma loaded with 140 grain nozzle partition. And the shot was under 40 yards. He just stepped out of a ravine and a pop, and two strange things happened. Suddenly I could see, I mean, it was gruesome, but it's forensics, right? So it has value in examining it after the fact. But first, he went flop, and then he came straight back up like a jack-in-the-box. And when he came up, I could see his entire close side rib cage devoid of hide or fur.
Holy cow.
And lots of, like, holes in it. Like,
really?
Most of the flesh between the ribs was blown out. He trotted a few steps and tipped over, right? He was dead from the get-go, but it literally, it's a partition, right? But the nose of that thing blew up even just on a little coyote. And there was so much back pressure as that cartridge went in and juiced his vitals that it literally blew that thin hide off the entrance side. And it was the strangest visual to shoot. See the coyote go whop and then boing, and you're like, I can almost see through him. And I mean, it was, I felt bad. I don't think he felt anything. The shock was such that I think he was just like nerves, jump up and try and get away, and then gone, passed out. But still, one of those bullet anomalies. So, yeah.
That's crazy. I would have never thought
Pretty
of
wild,
something
huh?
like that, yeah.
I was unable to salvage much of that hide.
I would assume.
Yeah.
I shot a coyote with a 7 Rem mag from 700 yards. And that is the wrong choice if you want to keep the fur. Regardless of range, I can tell you that. But I shot it, and it was facing straight away. One of my clients had shot at it, and I just said, hey, do you want the fur? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, you shoot at it first, and if he takes off running, I'll shoot at him. And he got out there. He stopped at 700 yards facing directly away from us. And I had already dialed the 700 yards. And I put it right on the back of his head. But I guess I dialed more like 680. So I put it on the back of his head and tried to shoot him in the head from 700 yards away. And I ended up hitting almost right up the butt. And it made a hole much bigger than I wanted it to be. But, I mean, it was probably the size of...
On his backside,
yeah,
up through.
I mean, one of the issues is that I hit him kind of on an angle going up from his backside up towards his neck, so it was an elongated hole.
Yeah.
But it was still a very large hole. I mean,
speaking of very large holes and impact sides, I have another story. When I was in my late teens, I think, I shot a big husky dog, husky breed, that was...
Why did you shoot this dog?
It needed it.
Oh, okay.
So I was in farm country, right? And it had just mowed through the neighbor's chickens.
Ooh.
And was frantically chasing the neighbor's brood mares and baby colts. And my neighbor came over sobbing. Her pet chicken had just died in her lap. She had blood all over her. Chicken blood. It was kind of wild. And so there's the dog killing everything. And so I grabbed my rifle. All I had handy was a 270. Loaded with 140 grain Nosler ballistic tips. And this is going to date me a little bit. It was some of the very first ones that came out. And they were built like Varmint bullets. And they quickly became known for blowing up on impact. And Nosler strengthened the jacket, made them thicker, maybe put some antimony or tin in the core or something to make that bullet tougher. It's a great bullet now, but I took this out, ran out in the field, took a rest across a post about 160, 170 yards and whistled. And this dog quit chasing this baby long-legged colt, right? And turned and looked at me straight on. And I shot it right there. Like if it had an Adam's apple, that was where it would. the dog just went straight down, right? Great. So I went over there to drag it out of the field away from all the horses, and to my shock, the entire front of that dog's neck was just gone. Like a cantaloupe size piece was whittled out of it. You could see the spine, all the protuberances, gone.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah. 270, reasonably close up, going real fast with hand loads, with a varmint type bullet impacting, and then
talk about displacement.
Yeah.
Displaced everything.
Anyway, I've never forgotten that one. But I think the moral of the story here is we're talking about fur. Deer and elk cartridges are not the right choice. So let's shift gears now and talk about true varminting. Let's say you're that guy that just loves to load up 600 rounds and go spend 3 or 4 days in Wyoming or parts of Montana or whatever, where you can get into a prairie dog town, and by the time you come home, you have 600 empty cases, and your elbow is sore from cleaning your barrel, every 50 rounds or whatever you do. What cartridge? Let's start with you. What cartridge would you pick?
I'm going to go
that?
2 different ways on this.
That's wise, because you have to let one barrel cool while you
For close range, under 100 yards, I'm going to go 22 long rifle. Because it's cheap,
you just made
it's
a lot
affordable, and
Sure.
it's just quick and easy. You know, you can buy a bucket of bullets.
Sure.
And, under 100 yards, you're shooting prairie dogs. It's just bing, 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 bing,
Heck, you
cheap,
can,
affordable.
I've shot at prairie dogs with a 22 at ridiculous.
Oh,
range.
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I think I hit one at like 300 yards once.
Right, and it's fun to plink around at longer ranges with the long rifles, but if I am poking out there a little further, I'm going to go 223.
Very
Once again, very affordable and very easy and accessible to find.
Sure. And lots of different rifle types chambered for it.
Yeah.
Tate?
I love the 22 long rifle because it's so cheap and fun to shoot. I would probably, if I'm like actually trying to thin out a varmint population and not just necessarily playing and trying to sneak up, less than 100 yards of a whole prairie dog town and do all that, I'd probably go 17 HMR on the lower end because I can hold dead on almost out to 120, 130 yards. And out to 200 yards, you're still fine. I'm probably going to agree with Landon on the 223, though. If I'm just going to go out there and really reach out and touch stuff and shoot lots of ammunition.
So boring and so wise.
Now, if we're not going to be wise about this, let's go with a 7 PRC for those prairie dogs. That's going to be the fun thing to do.
Way, way out there. Well, you'll burn out barrels real fast, but let's take a tangent. I have taken a big game rifle on prairie dog shoots, and I'll keep it to the side, and I'll shoot a shot here and there so I don't heat up the barrel. But if there's a particularly appealing opportunity, like prairie dog sitting on a mound with a good backstop at 480 yards, it's like,
you got to try.
It's time to see if I could kill a deer cleanly at that range. And that's really good practice, judging the wind, learning to run your big game rifle, following through recoil, trying to spot your own impacts. All that's really good stuff. But good practical choices here, guys. I think I have 4 kids. Around home, I don't get to hunt much anymore. I just wear the title of father guide, and it's one of my favorite things. But for them, I turn them loose with the 22 if we had ground squirrels or whatnot. I think with prairie dogs, I do like a 17 HMR better.
Yeah.
Skunks. We have a lot of skunks around here, and we keep a little Tika 17 HMR handy with a suppressor on it, good little scope, dial up, little bitty numbers written, and anytime there's a skunk in the morning, somebody just grabs it and runs out. A few minutes later, it sounds like an air hose disconnects and a skunk tips over. So pretty darn effective for that. If you're really shooting prairie dogs, though, and we're being serious about it, not just rolling down the truck window and shooting one while you're out checking on the cows, I don't think a 17 HMR or a 22 is gratifying enough. So we have to explain that, because that could be a very off-putting thing to some people.
It's not explosive enough.
Yeah. So prairie dogs can be very, very destructive nuisances in your fields, especially if you have cattle, horses, whatever. They create these giant fields that eat all the roots. So pretty soon, all you've got, the giant holes. Excuse me.
Well,
you've got a moonscape full of holes, and your horses walking around on it, hurting their legs,
or breaking the leg, or just making their hoofs go lame, whatever.
One of the worst is if you got cattle in an area like that, and you ride out to round them up, and you have to run your horse to turn one or something, and he steps in a prairie dog hole. You're probably getting a good hard fall, and your horse could very well break a leg. So
you could break a leg too.
Prairie dogs are definitely rodents of
mass destruction,
low value.
Yes, yeah.
And I mean, they can be cute and all those good things, but I don't want to be off-putting. The cutest way.
The 6mm arc does really good for what you're trying to do.
I'm trying to be diplomatic about this, folks, but shooting a prairie dog and having it more or less just turn to red mist in your scope is the best way to know that you actually got it. It's the best way to hasten the composting.
It's the most. We'll put
it's
it
the
as
most
the most
satisfying
ethical way.
Satisfying, yes.
It's the most ethical way to know that there were lights out.
Yep, and instantly crossing over into the happy alfalfa ground. So, the reason I say a 22 and a 17 HMR aren't ideal for that is, well, the 22 is limited on distance. The 17 is as well, but not as limited. And those just tip over a prairie dog pretty effectively, right? But if you shoot one with a lightweight bullet in a high-speed 22 center fire, there's not a lot left.
No.
And, I mean, you have to, I guess, appreciate that sort of thing. But some people get a lot of satisfaction about that. Anyway, let's not get mired too deep on that. So, if I were to pick, I think I would do something. Funny enough, I'd probably go with a 204 for my light rifle.
Yeah.
Unless I really need high volume stuff, and then a 17 HMR. But 204 with a light rifle, and then just because you can actually believe in yourself when you aim at a prairie dog at 600 or 700 yards, a 22 Creedmoor. I would switch back and forth between them so they didn't get burned out, too hot and burned out.
Yeah.
Yep. By the way, quick hardware tip for you here, folks. Talking about burning barrels out, the area of your rifle that burns out quickest is right in front of your chamber. It's called the throat, and it will take heat cracks if the barrel gets too hot. And I had a ballistician and lab specialist in Sweden at the Norma factory once tell me that they had documented when they're shooting groups and measuring barrel erosion that the 5th shot out of a 5-shot string causes as much erosion as the first 3 shots of that 5-shot string put together.
Wow.
Really?
Because the steel is getting so hot, it's becoming malleable, and the eroding effect of all those jet-like propellant gases and the burning particulates that are grinding their way through that throat, they all just wear more when the metal's malleable. Very fascinating to me, and a good reason that I try not to shoot my really good barrels more than 3 shots at a time in the big magnums.
Yeah.
Now, that was with a 300 Magnum, Winchester Magnum cartridge. Things like a 308 are a little easier on it. 6.5 Creedmoor is easier on it, and so forth. That's why target shooters get 3,000 to 4,000 rounds at the 6.5 Creedmoor, but a lot less with the fast hot rods.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk crossovers.
Ooh.
If you have one to keep in your truck for everything, because let's be honest, that's how most folks are, right?
Oh, yeah.
What are you going to pick, Tate?
Logical or is this a need or a want?
You can have one of each. You can have your favorite and the one you'd actually recommend to everybody else.
Perfect. I like this. Okay. I'm still going to go with that 6mm or the 243. I'd probably go with a 6 Creedmoor just because I could shoot a deer with it if I needed to as well.
You can't shoot one with a 243?
Oh, you could easily, but a little bit bigger bullet.
More reasons. Why do you like the 6 Creed better than the 243?
So I mostly because it's new, honestly.
Okay.
And I don't own one currently. I own a 243.
So you need one.
Yes, I need one. I need a 6 Creedmoor, so if I can justify it, it justifies me going out and buying a new rifle.
Well, that makes total sense. And we should never need justification, but sometimes, I mean, it helps. Some practical
can I elaborate
reasons.
on his newer? I think this is his big thing. Short 243 bullet, long 6mm bullet.
I can reach out and touch a little
Sleek
bit.
and sexy. It's visually indicative of the difference, the capability difference between the two cartridges.
Yes.
Fast twist barrel in the 6mm Creedmoor. Long, sleek, high BC bullets loaded further out so you intrude less in the powder capacity. And tighter throat tolerances usually equal a more accurate rifle that has more authority at long range and less wind drift, which are both really crucial.
Yes. And, I mean, there's all that. That's what I meant by newer. That's a great description.
Sure.
But I also just want one.
So is that your, like, the passion cartridge, or is this the one you'd recommend for everybody?
I think it's a really great cartridge for an all-around predator. You could use it on deer, especially in the whitetail woods, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Both my girls have shot their first deer with the 6 Creedmoor.
Yeah. And I know, like, I've killed a deer with a 223. I've killed several deer with a 223. I can tell you that it's on the lighter end of what I would recommend for sure. And you'd have to use the right bullet. I shot him with a Barnes, I want to say it was a somewhere around 70 grain bullet out of a Barnes, and it killed it very dead. It killed all the deer very dead. I love a good 223 to just have as a ride-around truck because you don't have to, like, if I go out there, I'm like, I just feel like shooting at that rock. I can shoot 20 or 30 rounds at that rock and not feel like I just wasted a week's worth of grocery money.
Yeah.
Right? But I can also, with that 6 Creedmoor, or even the 243, or even the 22 Creedmoor, you can reach out and touch stuff. And at closer ranges, with a deer or something similar, especially, like, we're talking, let's get off the deer tangent.
Yeah.
Let's
We're
say
talking crossover varmints and predators here,
I'm sorry.
You must be a big game hunter.
I am a big game hunter. Well, let's talk wolves. That's on the bigger end. It's deer-sized predator. It's probably going to be a better, more authoritarian option than, let's say, a 223. 223 would kill it just fine, but let's say we have a 17 HMR or like a 17 Hornet. Some states, it's not even illegal to shoot wolves because wolves are classified as more of a big game species.
Yeah.
So I'd probably go with that. A 223 is my good ride-around truck that's like a good crossover because I've killed lots of coyotes with a 223. I shot, I don't know how many prairie dogs and rock chucks with a 223, but if I had, like, the least logical option, I'm going to go with that. I mean, it's a logical option, but the more expensive of the two, I'm going to go with the 6 Creedmoor.
I wouldn't say it's illogical. I would say it's more expensive.
Yep.
Maybe a little more specialized. You're probably not going to get one in a semi-auto.
No.
Like the AR-223, you can. But when it comes time to actually put that thing on the ground, if it's a predator, it's a way better choice.
It's a way better choice.
Yeah. Now you've got about 12 to 1,500 rounds of barrel life with that, as opposed to 5,000 in your 223.
Exactly.
So if you're shooting a lot more prairie dogs and skunks, I would lean toward the 223.
Yep.
Landon?
For my truck gun, I'm gonna...
No, just an all around. You have to all around for everything. Let's say you're a passionate prairie dog guy, and right now you're loading your 600 rounds for this weekend, but you've just shot, let's dream, 70 coyotes through the winter season.
Jeez, 22 Creed.
For everything.
Everything.
Okay.
Because it's you can load them down a little bit. You can get that 22 caliber bullet in the 55 grain, right? And you can have a more versatile, just little poppy bullet, if that makes sense. A little more explosive.
It's hard to pick one for both of these pursuits because the 22 Creed, most reports are saying, depending on how hot you shoot it, you're getting from 1,200 to 1,500 rounds through it. So if you spend 600 rounds in a weekend on prairie dog towns,
every you got to go through 2 barrels a month. That's what you're doing.
You're going through some barrels because you can't shoot 200 rounds on prairie dogs in a day and not get your barrel pretty hot, at least, when they're moving a lot.
Yeah.
So, but I love your choice.
Because you can also reach out and poke with those 80 grainers. You know, you see a wolf at 1,000 yards, you send it anyways.
Right.
And
folks, we don't hate wolves. We may loathe wolves. No, it's a funny thing. I love to hear and see a wolf, but I like elk more because I can eat them, and I've hunted them all my life. And when it's a toss-up between 2 or 3 packs of wolves or 40,000 elk.
I'm gonna shoot 2 or 3 packs of wolves.
Yeah, I would rather have the elk in my neighborhood, is what I'm saying.
Yes,
I
know where a few wolves hang out. We should probably go up and thin those out. Actually,
we should try. I've
never
understood
matter of conservation.
Yeah,
I think,
and honestly, I've never understood why people think that one wolf's life or a pack of wolves' life is more valuable than 1,000 elk. They're all lives in the elk.
I think there's a lot of misinformation in there.
Sure.
So a few years
Tangent
ago.
Warning.
No, this is a really good tangent though, because
Yeah.
now we're talking about why we should control predator populations.
Sure.
And why we should control varmint populations. And the cartridges matter because we want to be ethical in our decision-making skills, because we want to look good from an outsider's perspective. If somebody's never hunted before, and
Plus, we don't want the animals to suffer, and we want to be as effective with every bullet as we can.
Exactly. Yeah. But why we predator hunt is, let's take lions, for example, and then we'll talk wolves, because they're even worse.
Yeah.
So we talk lions. The average lion will go through, a female with cubs will actually kill more than a male. Because she has to feed more mouths.
A deer a week or more.
The deer a week or more. Usually it's on average a deer every 4 days to 7 days for a lion.
Yeah. So 60 to 100 deer per year to feed one lion.
And then
maybe with cubs.
Yeah, and it's sometimes as low as high as, even more than 120 deer a year potentially. Mm-hmm. And then the toms, they got to make a kill every 7 to 12 days. So a little bit less, but you're still talking somewhere between 50 and 70 deer a year. Maybe 40 at the lowest, if that's a bad year for that tom.
Yeah.
But let's say an average of 65 deer a year per lion.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking ungulates. They'll kill elk, they'll kill calves, they'll kill all those things.
Your backyard dog.
Yep, they'll kill your backyard dog. There's 6,000 lions in the state of Colorado that they estimate.
Yeah.
If you do the math...
that's probably low.
That's probably
lions
low.
Lions are very secretive.
If you do the math... 6,000 times 65 deer.
A lot.
That's a lot. You're killing over. They're killing over 200,000 ungulates a year.
Wow.
So when you think about that, if 80, I think 85% of Colorado's funding comes from hunters and fishermen, and most of that comes from elk hunters because they have the highest elk population of anywhere in the United States.
Yeah.
So when you start doing the math, if there's less elk, there's less money for conservation. Mm-hmm. And that means less money for the lions as well. So when you start doing the math, and wolves are even worse, they kill more deer and elk.
Oh, yeah.
And bears, you get
especially
into bears.
Elk and moose.
Yep.
Yeah. And the trouble is, the predators tend to be managed by emotion, because so many people get all wound up and write in and campaign and all these things. So unlike elk and deer, which are usually managed for money, right? They're managed for healthy populations and opportunity or trophy quality, whatever. But it usually boils down to, if there's a hard decision to be made, it's made in favor of money, because the wildlife agencies have to pay their employees, right? And I don't hold that against them, right? They do the best job they can with what they have and the decision-making abilities they possess. I often disagree with their decisions, but I don't claim that they're intentionally destroying our herds or anything like that. On the other hand, the emotion-driven decisions that are mostly like leveraged by politicians for predators can be catastrophically bad. During college, for a very brief time, I think I lasted one whole semester, I was a wildlife biology major, right? And so I had a series of classes focused on that. And one of my final research projects was a paper, a massive paper. I think this is back before we had all kinds of really easy assets to help us. I think I had to do about 10 pages.
Wow.
Proper, and like, you can't make the font bigger.
Yeah.
And it's double and a half space, right? This was a big research project, and it was in the late 90s on the wolf effect in Yellowstone. And I learned stuff that sent shivers up and down my spine. The wolves, they anticipated they'd increase to a certain number and then stabilize there and stay there. Within 3 years, they were double that number and exponentially growing. The moose population, I mean, it's been a long time, so my numbers are going to be pretty hazy, but the moose population was down by 85%, something like that. Elk population had gone from, I mean, these are numbers you can look up, folks, but extremely plentiful throughout western Wyoming, southwestern Montana, and all of central Idaho. Just huge elk numbers. They plummeted catastrophically because of the wolves.
There was, so right before they reintroduced wolves into the Frank Church Wilderness of Idaho, it had the highest elk population that they'd ever had in the Frank Church Wilderness.
Yeah.
They estimate there was somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 elk just in the Frank Church Wilderness area. And it might have been higher than that too, honestly. But I was talking to one of the pilots there when I was there hunting elk. By the way, I consider myself to be a fairly decent elk hunter. I better be because I do it for a living. But I did not see a single elk. We walked 65 miles in the Frank Church Wilderness, and I was talking to one of the pilots. I also talked to one of the outfitters in there. But when I talked to one of the pilots, he says, I would be shocked if there's over 1,000 elk in the Frank Church Wilderness anymore. And when I talked to the outfitter, he says that on average they have to ride 20 to 30 miles a day
to
find elk every other day.
Yeah, that's nuts. It shouldn't be like that. That is prime elk habitat.
It is.
Yeah. But it's so rough, the wolves can't be controlled in there. You can't get hunters in there to effectively trap them or shoot them. Government agencies aren't going to go in there unless it's by helicopter, and that's pretty controversial, right?
Which it shouldn't be, but...
Right. But that is some of the roughest country on this earth. I've spent some time back in there, and it's a young man's country.
Yes, which is why I need to go back in there while I'm young.
Yeah. I should try and go back at least once, because I'm almost old. Anyway, great tangent, guys. Back to cartridges. Where were we?
What's your all-around?
I was going to say, now you got to decide, Joseph. What's your all-around
If
crossover?
I have to pick just one, I'll tell you the two that I've used more than any others. And then maybe by the way I tell you, you guys can decide which one you think I like best. So I have a highly accurate 223. It's got a 223 wild chamber in it, so it's an AR built with an 18-inch proof research barrel. Rifle length gas system, so it's very smooth operating, low recoil impulse, incredibly accurate. I did a huge research project on this rifle, talked to national match armorers and so forth, and did every accurizing technique I could on it. And it'll put 5 77 grain Sierra tipped Match King bullets into a half inch at 100 yards. It's an ultralight AR. It's insanely accurate. So I've shot coyotes with that one I've hit them out to 719 yards. That was a finishing shot on a coyote. He'd run off a little bit and stopped. But I've hit a lot of them between 300 and 500 pretty consistently. Obviously, out that far, there's not a whole lot of, the French would say, puissance. There's not a lot of authority left, right?
Yeah.
But you can still kill them if you hit them in the vitals. And that's the rifle I keep by my nightstand. It's the one I toss in my truck if I just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We've shot coyotes out the window. I've shot prairie dogs with it. That would be my zombie apocalypse gun.
There it is. It's
really, really useful for that. Now, that's an expensive load. The stuff I'm shooting right now is Black Hills, actually 5.56 NATO factory ammo, because it gives me pretty good velocity, 2,750 feet per second out of an 18-inch barrel. With that bullet, it's a great combination. The other one is a 6mm Creedmoor. Now, if the option had been there for a 22 Creedmoor about 8 years ago when I built this rifle, I very likely would have opted for that. And going forward, I very likely would lean toward the 22 Creedmoor, because if you're shooting predators in a fast evolving situation and you just don't have time to range it, but you know it's between, let's say, 250 and 350 yards, the 22 Creedmoor has the edge because it's flatter shooting. Comes out the muzzle of a 24-inch barrel at nearly 3,300 feet per second.
That's fast.
Compared to the 2980-ish that my 6mm Creedmoor's doing, right?
Yeah.
However, that 6mm Creedmoor, it's another kind of home build. I got a pre-fit barrel for a Defiance Action, proof research barrel, and then bedded it into a carbon fiber stock. That thing has become like the family go-to when something absolutely needs to die. And up to including deer, right? For the kids on their first deer hunts. That lives in our living room and is the instant go-to anytime a coyote's spotted in one of the back fields. And it just doesn't fail. We've hit coyotes over 700 yards pretty regularly with it. And usually when you hit a coyote, just a big flop and a puff of snow and maybe the tail twitch, and that's it. My little boy shot one 9 years old last winter at 384 yards or something. My daughter shot one at a similar. I mean, you put the crosshairs on, dial the CDS chart on the low pulled scope to the correct yardage, and squeeze the trigger, and it's gonna die.
Yeah.
Now we shoot 108 grain ELD match bullets in factory ammo, or we shoot 110 grain A-tips in my hand loads. That thing is a zinger. And we've killed deer with both. I've seen both those bullets stop in young deer, broadside shots. And there's nothing left but froth and tiny bullet fragments inside. It's not something I would choose to shoot an elk with.
Yeah.
Personally. Right?
I have killed an elk with a 243.
Mm-hmm.
It was on the lighter end. It was the first elk I ever shot. I had to shoot it twice, but that's fairly common with a lot of cartridges. But it passed fairly quickly. But I also made great shot placement on it, and I used a partition bullet. So
Well, I've told this story before, probably with a load just like that. 100 grain Remington core locked. I watched an 11-year-old young man shoot a 5-point bull in Colorado. And I mean, it was a kid hunt, right? You get out of the truck and let him lean over the hood and shoot this out 205 yards, standing perfectly broadside on the edge of the field, and behind the field is a giant canyon.
Whoa.
Chasm, right? Flop. Perfect center of both lungs, right? And the elk does his little, we thought, dying movements. We'd all seen the hit. I mean, it was a good shot. And Dad takes the gun, clears it, hugging his son and all that. It was actually the kid's second elk, so it wasn't that, wasn't quite as euphoric as the first one might have been. But puts the gun in the case, zips it up, puts it behind the back seat of the truck, and we drive up to collect his elk. So this is 3-4 minutes later. As we're driving up, this bull jumps up and bails into the canyon. No. Superman's it off, going full throttle, racehorse style. 6 to 8 inches of snow. That canyon side was just absolutely spiderwebbed with deadfalls, mostly aspen with the bark come off. So it was just slick underneath that snow. The elk went about 200 yards down that side with a 243 bullet squarely through both lungs. We didn't get another shot into him. That was the only, there was no doubt that it was a perfect shot placement, right? Behind the shoulder, halfway up the body, center punch.
Swamp.
Yeah. And that bull lived several minutes and then still had enough juice left to jump up and bail off the side and drop down into that canyon. The bullet didn't exit. 100 grain, Remington core locked. It did exactly what it was designed to do. But it was an elk.
Yeah. And they're big.
Yeah. They can soak up a lot of punishment.
They can. But a coyote generally can't. So
no. Unless you shoot them with a 6.5 by 284 and skin them with one shot, and then they can jack in the box. No, just kidding. But
something to talk about is there are times, just as important as cartridge selection is bullet selection in here. Because I've used a 308. I've used even a 30-06 on coyotes, and I'll shoot them, and they'll roll because they were running. And that's how I got good at shooting stuff on the move, is shooting at coyotes,
Is he good at shooting stuff on the move?
No.
Carry on.
Actually, I've never seen it, so I can't tell you yes or no.
I don't know. I actually haven't shot anything on the move with you.
Without anybody to refute, we will believe.
I don't shoot at stuff on the move as much as I do. I used to. I don't really shoot a deer or elk on the move, but
yeah, coyotes are different.
If you got a coyote at 500 yards running across a field, I look at, if I would look at Landon and be like, so you're saying there's a chance?
I have seen that, actually.
Okay.
But I've shot them with a 30-06, an Accubon or something like that. It'll roll them, and then they'll get back up and take off running again. Mm-hmm. And, they may only run another 40 or 50 yards or 100 yards and then tumble over dead. But I've done the same thing with a 204 or a 223 with a 55 grain VMAX or a 32 grain VMAX going 4,200 feet a second. And they don't get up.
So, funny enough, bullet choice is even important with predators and varmints. And I have an extreme example for you. I was in Wyoming on a 2-day varmint shoot one time, and I ran out of my 204 and 22 250 ammo. And I had my 30-06 with a bunch of 180 grain FMJ ammo. And we went for a walk. We were just tired of sitting and shooting from a bench. So we were walking up prairie dogs, and I was shooting them at between 20 and 40 yards with a 30-06, 180 grain FMJs.
You think that would have done it?
I quit doing it because it was making me sad. I'd lung shoot these things, and it would just like a knitting needle through them, and they're crawling and squealing toward their hole. And they'd go like 15 yards sometimes. And I didn't have any other ammo to
switch to.
So I started walking with a buddy that had a 22 250. And I'd shoot, and then he'd shoot, and they just missed, right? So aside from being satisfying, that is actually the most ethical way to kill these things so they don't suffer, right? Yeah, can you believe that? A 30 caliber full metal jacket wasn't putting the lights out instantly on an animal the size of a 1 liter soda can or smaller.
It makes you wonder. I mean, obviously that we're not war fighters or anything like that, but it makes you wonder. Like, we're using a 5.56 to kill people in the military, and a 30-06 doesn't lights out a prairie dog.
I was joking with Tate on this bullet choice. A 6.5 Creedmoor, it's not big enough for a raccoon.
I was using the wrong bullets on raccoons, and and they were getting away. They were crawling down their holes.
Yeah. Bullet expansion, or at least a bullet that yaws and tumbles and breaks up, is very important to causing fast, humane kills. I interviewed a lot of returned veterans from Desert Storm and so forth, and from Afghanistan back in the day. And most of them will tell you with the 223 and a full metal jacket, they all developed basically a stitching process. 3 shots.
Yeah.
And 3 was usually enough to slow them down. Like, wow. And that's why the Special Forces really liked the OTM type match bullet. It's not technically designed to expand or anything like that. It's designed for maximum accuracy so that the designated marksmen, the snipers and so forth, could make the hits they had to. But it also dropped people because those bullets are yawing and tumbling and breaking up.
Yeah, which makes sense.
So back to varmints, what you really want is, especially on true varmints, like high volume stuff, bullets that just vaporize on impact.
Yeah.
And the faster they're going, the more effectively that happens, because you just turn your prairie dogs into red mist. You drop the skunks on the spot. Your raccoons don't get away into their hole, and so forth.
He saw me. I saw you shooting with a 22 Creedmoor that went a little ways, but you also shot it.
It kind of flopped and rolled, 330 yards. Yeah.
Yeah, flopped and rolled, and it didn't go far. But Landon saw me shoot 4 or 5. I was using a match bullet out of a 147 grain match bullet out of a 6.5 Creedmoor, and it would just pencil through them.
Probably going too slow.
It was going
for a little thin-skinned thing.
Yep. It wasn't going fast enough, and so match bullets are generally thought of as they kind of blow up on impact, right? But
they're not predictable. That's part of the reason that manufacturers recommend against using them.
Yeah, but I switched that 204. Going
with a VMAX bullet going 4,000 feet per second,
4,200 feet a second, a 32 grain VMAX, and I've shot a skunk at 370 yards with it, and I mean it was lights out. I had one raccoon out of probably, including the coyote, probably 10 animals that I've shot with it at this point that moved after I shot it.
Yeah, speed and explosive bullet fragmentation is the way to go with varmints. Now, how about on coyotes? I have a friend that does a lot of coyote calling in Nevada, and he was shooting a little different cartridge, 22 Nosler, fits in an AR and runs almost as fast as a 22 250, and he was loading 60 grain Hornady VMAXs for a long time and having a lot of coyotes get away. And he was hitting them pretty well. That's some video and so forth. And he switched to a 55 grain Nosler ballistic tip, which has a little thicker jacket. It's a little bit lighter, but it's actually slightly tougher. And they all went to dying. He found that 60 grain Hornady VMAX was just not getting all the way through some of the angled shots on those coyotes and killing them effectively. Made me kind of sad because that's one of the most accurate bullets you'll usually try.
Yeah,
is that 60 grain VMAX. I shoot that in a lot of 223s when I'm accuracy testing, and I want to get the best out of them.
Landon, what do you think? I mean, it seems to me like you got to try and find, because not every animal's the same, so you got to have a good bullet choice, but like you're trying to find that happy medium of enough penetration, but not so much that it's just penciling through them. Because a raccoon, once you've skinned them out,
they're not very wide.
They're 3 or 4 inches.
Yeah.
A big one is 5 inches.
Mm-hmm. So this is a personal preference. It doesn't matter the animal I'm shooting. I want my bullet to stay in it.
Really?
Yep. It doesn't matter. Of course, I've never hunted dangerous game and stuff in Africa.
Have you hunted bears much?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I love my bullet to stay in there and dump all the energy.
Okay. See, I'm in the other school. I like an exit wound.
I'm the same way.
Where you get a blood trail.
Yep.
But I'll tell you what the biggest defining factor there for me is a bullet that stays in an animal on a broadside shot behind the lungs, even if it's a rib. You're going through hide, maybe a 1/4 inch of rib, a 1/2 inch on an elk, maybe an inch of meat, and then you're into lungs, which is just strong bubbles, right?
Yep.
If it'll stop against that offside hide, that bullet will not adequately penetrate on a quartering shot where you have to break a 2-inch shoulder bone or even that 3 or 4 inch shoulder knuckle. Go through 8 inches of meat, then 2 ribs at an angle before you even get into the lungs.
Landon says that, but he uses a 300 PRC.
Yeah.
With
it's also true. 210 AccuBonds.
With a 210 grain AccuBond? Yeah. That's a bullet that will penetrate through almost every deer you ever shoot.
Yep, it does.
Almost every deer he's ever shot.
Now, in a predator...
I have caught lots of bullets with that 210 grain bullet.
Yeah.
Yep.
Predator or varmint, though, I agree with you 100%. Because it protects your fur, and with something like that can crawl in a hole in a matter of a second and a half, you want to shock the movement out of them. Yeah, and you don't need blood trails usually. Hopefully not. I have blood trailed coyotes for more than a half mile.
We shot so going back to that 55 grain VMAX, this is one of those scenarios where it was like coyotes running 350 yards and up a hill, and the snow would slow it down a little bit. So we're like, well, so you're saying there's a chance. So we got out and me and my buddies both had ARs. We got off the road and we started sending volleys towards this coyote, and
measuring shots.
Yes, measuring shots. And I actually was quite nice because he would shoot, then I would shoot, and by the time I got back on the coyote, I could call his hit and he could call my hit, and we were both behind it in the beginning, and then kind of walked ourselves into it. And my buddy hit the coyote at about 620 yards when he finally hit the thing with a 55 grain VMAX, and obviously that's a long shot for a VMAX bullet. But you could see the hole in it from where we were at through the scope. And we were just using like a 1:9 or a 3:9 variable scope.
Yeah, so still putting a big hole in it.
Still putting a big hole in it. And we got up to where that coyote was. It was gone.
Got up and left.
And we had to trail that for about 2.5 miles.
Did you recover it?
We did.
Yeah, good.
But it went a ridiculously long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can happen. That's why it's important to choose your bullet, choose your cartridge, and then really work it out to get as ethically capable with it as you can. So, guys, you've heard my two, the 223 and a really accurate AR, or something like a 6mm Creedmoor, maybe a 22 Creedmoor if I was to do it again. Just from hearing me talk, which would you say that's that guy's favorite?
Oh. I'm going to go the Creed. The
22?
The 6 Creed as my guess, because you said it's the living room gun, the kids grab it, you said your favorite part's to watch your kids.
Yeah.
That's my reason.
Cool.
I liked it. I'm going to go with that 6 Creed. Yeah.
So the bolt action wins.
The bolt action wins.
When you need more, get a Creedmoor.
Yes.
What is your favorite out of the two? Can you pick a favorite?
Well, no. Because in the last 5 years, I've used the 6 Creed far more. But if there was a home invasion or the bad guys are coming, I would definitely grab the other one. So it's a balance, right? I mean, they're varmints too, two-legged varmints. Not to get politically incorrect here, but think of a final thought here, guys, for our listeners and viewers while I just throw this out. Folks, we have our 2025 elk hunting boot camp coming up the end of June. So we got March, April, May, and part of June still left to book, and we've got, 4 spots?
About 6 spots.
6 spots left.
Yep.
We're going to do somewhere around 3 groups of 12 students in each. We've got awesome instructors like Ron Spomer's going to help us instruct this year.
He is, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. And we have had tremendous feedback off of last year's boot camp. My son William said he got online yesterday and happened across a series of threads talking about the boot camp.
That makes me feel even better.
Yeah, and how much people loved it. I mean,
we have 3 people coming back from last year.
Really? That's outstanding.
They took a course. That's like taking a college course and then coming back to it because you had so much fun.
We had one guy, I won't mention his name here, but he came and took our course. Quiet guy, nice equipment, capable shooter. And I didn't even realize that I had pointed him towards an outfitter in Montana that I trust. But it's a hard hunt, deep in the Bob Marshall wilderness. A few months after our boot camp last year, 2 months, he sent me pictures of this giant bull elk. It was 360-something that he had killed, as well as a whopper of a big male black bear. And the sentence reads, if it hadn't been for your boot camp, I would not have been able to take either of these animals. And he'd shot that bear at 500 and some yards across a canyon, just a fraction of an opportunity. Thick trees, he'd been watching it, tracking it with a scope. It paused with a little gap in it, something like 505 or whatever. He smoked it, and it rolled 200 yards down the mountain, this big old black bear. And I think he was shooting a 7 PRC with 160 grain CX bullets, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then a couple days later, he got a chance at a bull elk that worked out of some timber. And it was a long shot. I don't remember. It was almost as long.
It was around the same as the bear. It was
almost, 480-ish, something like that. And he killed this bull elk. And he knew it was a nice 6-point, but he had a good guide. The guy was holding his cool. As soon as the bull tipped over, the guide lost it. Because he knew what a huge elk this was. But it was just, it sent chills up and down my spine when I read that. And he said, thank you for putting on the boot camp. If I had not had the skills that you taught me there, I would not have taken either of these animals.
That's so cool.
So cool. So satisfying to hear that as somebody who, loves hunting and loves sharing those skills and traditions with fellow hunters. So if you're interested, jump on Process Based Hunters website.
Yep.
And just click the tab for the boot camp.
Yeah, we have a few other things that you want to do as well. We have actual hunts that you could go on with us as well, mostly for archery and muzzleloader. But the biggest thing I would love you to go on is the boot camp, because that's a really good preliminary course to get you started into hunting. Joseph is going to be there working with you shooting. I'm going to be teaching you about elk. I'll be working with shooting a little bit, but not nearly as much as Joseph.
Elk calling, habitat, reading,
where to find out how to
language.
Traverse country.
Yeah.
That's a big thing, is people don't understand that.
Elk live where elk live.
Yeah, we had some guys. I got to go into this real quick. We had some guys come out to our semi-guided course, which is really fun. We had really good shot opportunity last year, but they come out and we teach them, and then we go out for 5 days and hunt. So we have a 2-day course of hunting, and then we go out and hunt for 5 days, semi-guided. And these guys in the first 2 days of us just doing the course, they weren't even hunting really yet, were so angry at us. Just so angry, because we hunted some very steep, gnarly country up there. Well, at least portions of it are. And one of the guys that they'd helped pack an elk out of some very steep stuff. And they get back and they're like, there's no elk in this country. I was like, you just had one on your back. What are you talking about? You've already carried one and you saw 2 cows while you were doing it. And he's like, there's no elk in this country. It's too steep.
I decree there are no more elk.
It was like, the king has spoken. But then the very next morning, we take them out, and they both missed elk. And those elk were scaling cliffs.
So clearly you hadn't taught him the shooting aspect. Well, you hadn't addressed it well enough.
Apparently not. But
that's where the boot camp
Come to the boot camp. We'll validate your rifle 0. We'll work it out to 600 yards on vital size steel targets. We'll talk about technique, field positions, crunching ballistics, bullet choice, cartridge choice, setting up your rifle for success, all that good stuff.
And it's just a really good, I say crash course, but it's not a crash course.
It's intense.
It's intense course.
In-depth course.
In-depth and intense course of mountain hunting in the West. It will relate to other species as well, but we focus on elk.
Yeah.
If you don't want to learn about elk, you can come and maybe I can convince Joseph to come out and shoot some more buffalo with us. You can come out. I have some bison hunts on my website too. Go ahead and check out my website, look at those bison hunts, and then we shot some buffalo with some really cool stuff last year.
Yeah, 405 Winchester and 35 Wayland.
Yeah.
Personal favorites, that 405. It did awesome things.
Yeah.
We shot one with a 22-250, talking about varmint cartridges.
22-250 AI.
It was
Butted to ear?
It was more of a neck shot, but it went through and just decimated the spine.
Yeah.
And it was lights out.
Sure.
So
it would be.
yeah. And obviously, I would never recommend anybody uses a 22-250, but it's literally the only rifle we had with us.
Yeah.
At the time.
Well, if it's just collecting meat and you're not far, that'll work. Yep.
But we'd love for you guys to come and hang out with me and Joseph and Ron Spomer. We're gonna have Landon's gonna be there as well.
I feel
all of us unsavory characters.
You'll get to
there.
meet the most interesting man in the world, my business partner Rico.
I think he's the only normal one.
What's funny about Rico is he doesn't actually hunt. He's just my partner. He kind of helps us stay organized in the business, and he's really one of the biggest reasons why we are as successful and functional as we are. So
we love Rico.
Yes, but you'll get to meet him, and he's probably the most interesting out of all of us.
So, final thought on Predator cartridges. I'm going to throw a twist in this. If you could only hunt one or the other for the rest of your life, would you hunt high-volume varmints or selective, work hard, call them in predators?
I'm a predator guy myself. Okay. I love to hunt. I love the hunt of everything. Yeah. I mean, it is fun just to lay down and let some lead fly, but I love to hunt. So I'm gonna
cartridge will be 22 Creedmoor.
22 Creedmoor.
Okay.
Oh, this is hard for me because I have guided for most of my adult life and I hunt a lot. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's nice to just shoot. I get to watch a lot of people hit and miss animals, and I teach when they miss and I cheer when they hit, but I don't get to shoot a lot of stuff. I get to shoot a lot more than most people, being honest. But compared to how much I hunt versus how much I actually get to shoot. But honestly, I'd probably go with predators still because I'm kind of like Landon. I still enjoy the hunt. And I have a personal thing with bobcats. Like, if you you say the word elk, I get excited. You say the word bobcat, I get euphoric.
And if you want to see him lose his voice and quiver, just show him a red fox skin. This is on his holy grail list.
It's definitely that. I have a lot of things. I love predator hunting. That's kind of what I get to do. The big game season, I focus on other people. During the predator season, that's my time to do my own thing and not worry about other people. A red fox is definitely on my list. If anybody ever wants to take me out, Joseph, I'd love to go.
And what's your cartridge going to be?
204.
Nice.
I'm going to go with a 204 for that red fox.
Okay.
Bobcat, I'm going to go with a 204 as well.
If I had to choose one or the other, I would also go with the predators. It's just, I'd rather shoot one coyote than 20 prairie dogs.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's just the way I'm wired, but I like the challenge. I love being able to call coyotes and that surge of adrenaline you have when one comes loping over the rise or out of the ravine or whatever after you've been calling and working your butt off, and then the shakes set in and the challenge of trying to hit it. It's more like big game hunting, which I really love. And shoot, folks, I will take one of each. I love all my kids and I love all my cartridges. So I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. Guys, thanks for joining me here today. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh,
It's been cool.
I love talking about guns, and I love talking with you.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, folks, if you want to reach out, contact us. Obviously, Process Based Hunter. That's on Instagram as well, right?
Yeah, you can follow us on Instagram as well.
Yep. And you can ping Tate with questions. Landon, you got social media?
Yeah. Same Process-Based Hunter or my personal one's Landon Bassett 22.
Yep.
Landon Bassett 22 Creedmoor?
22.
That's, 22. I feel like that's getting changed soon, yeah.
Up on Instagram. So
You guys willing to answer questions or rude remarks?
Absolutely.
We always, rude remarks. I caught that one a little late. I will look at the rude remarks and forego them, but I will definitely answer questions anytime. We have a chat. You can text us anytime on our website has our phone number listed. Reach out anytime about any questions about any of our courses or cartridges or anything like that.
Awesome. Obviously, reach out to me on Instagram as well if you want, or better yet, on patreon.com/backcountry. I prioritize all of those messages from our loyal members there. And by signing up there, you'll get access to our bonus content that I try and publish once a week or thereabouts, depending on whether or not it's tax season or hunting season. Thanks for tuning in today, folks. I'm here with Landon and Tate, and we will see you in the backcountry.
Oh, yeah.
Please keep that.